Hi, thanks for joining me in my shop. I'm just starting to look at this cool looking Marantz 4230 receiver. I've already done a little bit with this, so I already have a notion of what's going on with it. It's not terribly good. And I've checked on the internet for the value of this, the sale value. You know, it's $100 to $150. It's not a lot. But the thing is, this guy, if he could work, would be really useful to me here in my shop. So there's a chance I may end up the owner of this if I can make it work. Now I've already poked around with it a bit, and what I've discovered is the power switch doesn't lock on. You have to physically hold it. Watch. So I'm holding. Okay, so holding it in right now. And if I let go, you can watch the front panel. So it just will not hold in for some reason. It's probably a mechanical problem in here, but it could be a defective switch. But an on-off switch is not enough to stop me, that's for sure. So I can overcome that in any one of a dozen ways. So I'm not worried about that. The thing I am worried about is it appears as if there's two amplifiers in this unit. Because this is actually a quadraphonic or 4-channel. See, it's got the 4 there. It's a, or as they call it, a quadradial. Quadradial. I guess I had to come up with their own word or something. Anyway, it's got two separate amplifiers in it to produce the quad effect. It's two stereo amplifiers for 4 channels. It looks like one of those amplifiers, the output is not there. The other amplifier appears to work, and the way I sorted this out, and I did this all off camera. It's a little unusual for me to do these things off camera. But here, if you look at all these terminals here for speakers, front, rear, and up under here, main speakers, remote speakers. So, and I'm not exactly sure how this is arranged, but wow, you can hook up a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 speakers to this thing. Now, I'm not saying you should. I have a feeling if you hooked up 8 ohm speakers to this guy, you'd probably do some damage to him. But it has a switch down here to accommodate this. Okay, and let's see. Caution. When testing the amplifier in the BTL mode, power switch set to ×2. It is mandatory that all test equipment connected to the speaker terminals be isolated from the chassis and the power line ground. Additionally, the common or negative speaker terminals of the amplifiers must not be connected together by common leads of the test equipment. Wow, 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 wow. And bolder print. Do not ground any of the speaker leads. Wow. Okay, so there's a bit of an exposure with this amplifier to things people like me can do. Excuse me, they're going to innocently blow something up. Maybe that's what's happened. Maybe the output of the amplifier has been blown away. But in any case, these front outputs produce nothing. The rear work. Okay, so I'm just gonna. So I want to. What I want to do with this then is just try to quickly check what is going on with it and make a determination if I really think I can fix this. You know, it's just a little bit out of my normal type of stuff I like to work on, because I'm usually working on tube equipment and not transistorized equipment. But along the way I've acquired a pretty extensive stock of transistors and low voltage capacitors and all this kind of stuff. So I do have some parts anyway, you know, blown output transformer, which is, or transistor. I kind of flip those words around quite a bit, don't I? The output transistor is not impossible to deal with. And just judging by the what this says, Okay, so I've got it on the ×2. It's hard to see here, but it says 30 watts ×2, and on this side it says 12 watts ×4. So if you're going to run 4 speakers, you've got to have this thing switched over. Apparently if you don't, it doesn't say it here, but if you don't switch this over, you'll get into trouble with this receiver. So something about having all these outputs that have led to some, I don't want to call it maybe a substandard situation here. I'll have to read this a couple of times before I actually hook up any test equipment. This is a line out. Oh, that may have... no. So I don't know what went over on the video there. These were still plugged in. So when the receiver operated briefly, you may have heard it come right through the video there. I kind of forgot about that. We'll leave the speakers hooked up. You see I have one hooked up to the front and one hooked up to the rear. And you probably didn't notice, but when it played for that brief moment, it was only one speaker working, the rear one. Okay. All out. Now let's take a look inside here and see what we got. Quite a few different boards. I've seen the service manual for this. So knowing I have the service manual available also encourages me to go forward with this guy. So clearly here's the outputs. Here and here with the big cooling fins. And this style of transistor here under these clips. Okay, looks like a lot of bias adjustments in here. I'm guessing that's what these are. Big capacitors. So radio must be buried under here, under this can. Dolby noise reduction system. Look at that. Gee, it's like a separate little... Wow, even listed with the name Dolby on it. Of course, these boards are jam-packed with components. Sometimes, if you have output transistor problems or failures, sometimes it involves or because of the driver transistor. I'm looking up in here at them here. So it could be, maybe I'm going to discover that a couple of these are blown, and they may be blown because of problems further up. But after reading that note on the back of this stereo, it's really quite amazing, in fact, that this thing is still tied by a piece of string to this control. It's amazing it's still here. So, but I'll tell you, if I hadn't read that, I didn't read it last night. I glanced at it. If I hadn't read that, excuse me, there's a good chance that sooner or later I was going to do something here to cause a problem. That's probably what happened with this guy. And what would that problem be? Again, fiddling with the outputs. You're exposing the output, like fiddling with the speaker connections. You're exposing the output transistors to a rough ride. Well, I don't see anything in here that's jumping out at me. I don't see any burned up stuff, anything darkened. Nothing looks terribly out of sorts. This was built in the days of wire wrapping. You have all these pins, just wire wrapped onto them. Looks like a couple of test points here, maybe here too. There's probably test points throughout this. Now, another thing is the lights. Not that it's critical to me, but This is owned by a store in Toronto that's going to try to sell it. That's why I might be the guy who buys it. The lights are probably under this panel here. Then there's 2 meters here. One of them doesn't light. So it may have a light behind it, or it may have a light right inside it. Looks like it's pretty easy to get at the lights though. And a lot of these buttons, these push buttons here, they're pretty dirty. I wondered if it wasn't possible, just so much dirt on one of these. This is the speaker buttons here, main and remote. If even this switch is so dirty that's what's really causing the problem, but I kind of doubt it. I worked at an awful lot and nothing happened. Well, now the fact is, one of these amplifiers is in trouble, the other one is not. The other one appears to be working just fine. So even that would serve my purposes here in my shop. But it would be kind of cool if I could get the whole thing going. Well, I think from here it requires a fair bit of poking around. Luckily I got 2 amps here to compare one to the other, just going back and forth. So lots of large electrolytic capacitors in here. Everything looks to be of good quality. I'm not sure I would jump in and start thinking that a capacitor has caused a problem in this set. I think that's a little too far down the road. I suppose I can run this thing even without speakers and poke with the scope, potentially work my way through it here, comparing here to here. It also has a headphone outputs, front and rear. Which work the very same as the speaker outputs. So if I plug the headphones in here, is that true? If I plug the headphones into the front headphone jack, I hear nothing. Let me just double check that. Sometimes the headphones are fed right from the same point as the speakers. Other times it's fed earlier in the amplifier. Okay, I'm just going to put on a little antenna here. I can do it here. Okay, so just a piece of wire for an antenna. And as for the speakers, now the speakers are still connected. Here, and the other one's there. So just untangle these wires. The answer is no. Now the thing is, I have to, oh yeah, what's with this switch? What's with the switch? Let's take a look at the switch. Very long piece here. It looks like something that should move is not moving. It sounds like it's working. The switch itself doesn't go in and lock and then come back out. It just does the same thing. Turn the power off here, so I'm not at some kind of risk. Take a little bit of a closer look at that, so we can see. inside of the switch. So the switch post is right in line with this piece here. You can see that out here. My finger on the button. So here's the button. Looking for the hint of anything moving in here as I work the switch. Give me a hint on how this works. So you can see all these terminals. Yikes, there's a lot of them. Not a lot of wires hooked up. Well, still, yeah, a fair bit of wires. Why does an on-off switch have so much business going to it? So one of my options here is, this is reminiscent of the radio I just finished a while ago, is put in another switch to just take over. But look at all the wires. I was hoping for just 2 wires. Just what's with all that stuff? This really is the power switch. Yeah, this is power. Weird. You know what? There's a heavier wire down there, and it almost looks like this would be the on-off switch, kind of tacked on the far end of this thing. Nothing moving anywhere in there. Inside the white shell. Now I'm trying to figure out, well, how is exactly this thing supposed to work? Why is it riveted? This looks more like somebody's wagon than it looks like a piece on a stereo. Why does it look like it's hinged there? It almost looks like something should roll. It looks like a spool. And something should be rolling on it. Really? It's just the weirdest looking. It's really strange looking. It really looks that way. It looks like that black band would be like a band. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why would it? I just hit it with a pile of my favorite WD-40. Somebody at the door? Who's there? Yeah? What? Well, I can't let you out. What's up? What's going on? They want to know where spring is. That's what they're after. They're after springtime. Me too. I'm after the same thing. Where is the spring? Okay, after a little bit of a distraction there. here. So you can see the big wires here. This is almost certainly the on-off switch. So I want to short this for working on the radio. So we're going to take a guess. Maybe this is the amp that's in trouble, and maybe this is the good one. Who's to say for sure? Ohm meter. That's a really crude way of testing it. Okay, something else we can do, we'll do that comparative thing. So I won't put any speakers in. Just make sure the volume's down. We'll even pop open the speaker buttons are off. I can't imagine not having speakers plugged in is a big deal at this point. What I want to do is some voltage comparisons. Great on the actual transformer or transistor here. Okay, so we see about half. Hoo-ha! All the way. About half. All the way. It's a nice pattern. Go over to this side. About half. All the way. About half. All the way. So everything's testing pretty similar. Jeepers. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Okay, just didn't quite make contact. Okay, so these preliminary tests suggest to me there really isn't anything wrong with the amplifier. Or if they're, it looks like the amplifier outputs are working. So next test would be to try to bypass the preliminary amplification and feed a signal into the main amplifier and hear what comes out of the speakers. So let's think about this. If it turns out the two amplifiers are good, you know what, I can probably find this out otherwise. Maybe by feeding in signals into the back here. Especially like auxiliary may go straight to the amplifiers. So maybe I should try that a little bit more. And then also I can feed in a signal here somewhere and test the amp to see what comes out of it. If I can figure out where to shove a signal in. It all gets a little complicated. Now I do have the service manual, so I can pick my way through this for sure. At this point, looks pretty good. Just doesn't work. Okay, I think that's it for step one. I think I know what I got on my bench now. Hey, thanks for watching, and see what I work on. I'm not sure I'm going to work on this right now. See ya. Okay, so here's where I've gotten to with this switch on the front here, having now realized that it's not just an on-off switch. There's an on-off switch that's switching the power, but it's also switching some lines that go to the speakers. It's kind of an unusual affair. So when you push this power button here, you're actually pushing quite a bit of stuff. And yeah, it's a little more odd stuff about it. But if I can get the switch to work right, well, that would solve everything. So I'm going to switch to the other camera. You can see where the camera's looking. It's looking down into this area down in here. Okay, so I've been fiddling around here, and I just got to this point, and I thought, boy, I better start recording this because something may happen here. I don't know what. So I'll work the switch. This is the main power switch. So obviously, you know, what's caught my attention is that little lever, which I think is the essence of the latching mechanism on these switches. I think that is the part that's supposed to latch it in and then let it go when you push it again. I just have the feeling it's just not traveling. Maybe if I poke at it, maybe it's that simple. holding the switch in. I think maybe it's travel. Its travel is blocked somehow or interfered with, and a little bit of monkey business. Maybe it'll. So the alternative here. So what's the alternative? Okay, so along with fusing jumping the power switch, so AC power is on, I also have to jump these terminals you see there with the wires going to them. It's just a few connections, and what it is it runs. They all run to the speakers. So when the power's off, the speakers are actually switched open from here. Isn't that strange? Now that could be to prevent, the thump and the whump when you power up or power down the amplifier, but it seems kind of weird. Most of these guys have a protection circuit with a relay, and that's how they handle it. They don't do it with the power button, which there's a lot of problems with that, it seems to me. So exactly why they're doing this, I don't know. So my option is to simply jumper all that stuff too. And then there's the one weird thing, which is one more connection on the back of this switch, which when you turn things off, it closes. But then when you turn power on, this switch opens. So what is it that needs to be closed when the unit's switched off? Well, that's weird. I don't know, once again, some kind of whump control. It's just, I don't know. So my option there, since the switch is always going to be in the off position when it's relaxed, that switch is closed. But I can see that it grounds out. I think it was the emitter of there was some circuitry around well anyway, it grounds something out which looks to me like you should not have that thing grounded when you have this thing operating. It looks to me like that would be a bad thing to have happen. So I just nip the wire going to it, it's permanently open. As for the whump, if there really is a whump problem, I guess we'll find out. I'll hear it on even my little speakers, and I don't think they can be damaged by a whump out of something like this. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know, but I must press forward. I must press forward with only partial knowledge. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jumper out everything else on the switch. So the switch is permanently electrically closed. That's satisfactory for now. Later I can think about putting in another on-off switch, just like I did with the radio I just finished. Put another switch somewhere on this panel, a master switch, power switch, whatever you want to call it, on it somewhere. But I can do that later because I still have trouble with power amp output, which could be the switch again. It could be the switch. The switch is switching speakers. Okay, I'm going to get on with soldering that stuff up. Well, it turns out to work properly on the switch, I'm going to have to take off this front panel. That means popping off all these knobs, which sometimes is easy. Okay, and there we go. Okay. What do we get for that? Is this what's wrong with the power switch? You've got to be kidding me. Is this the problem here? Oh my gosh. Huh. Really? Can you see that? Let me get the close-up on it. As soon as I can find the camera. I can't believe this. It's just another case of you never know. Wait, where are you, camera? Oh, right over here. See the rubber ring? Get it? Let's just move that ring. Look at this one over here. It fell on it as soon as I touched the thing, but that's not going anywhere. And that button feels exactly the way it's felt the whole time. Okay. Now I've probably posted a redacted video to get to this spot. It's probably taken me, oh, I don't know, maybe an hour at the most. Let's see. It's probably actually been 3 hours, but okay now. Does this switch actually work? Oh my gosh, it works perfectly fine. Okay. Wow. Man, and think about what I was thinking about doing here. I gotta cut off that jumper wire and wow. I can't believe it. I can't believe that was the problem. Oh my gosh. Okay. So now that might maybe not be the entire problem, but it's a good chance now that the switch goes into its proper position. It's going to close in on the dead front speakers. There seems to be no output. I'll bet you it's just because that switch was never depressed all that way. Oh man. Give me my cutters. There we go. Was it worth taking that front panel off? Yep. Might be nothing else wrong with this whole unit. Okay, gotta stop now though. Too excited.
Savers Mortgage, 416-493-1983, or apply anytime at savers.ca.
So these are the speakers that are in the ceiling in my laundry room and the washroom that I recently renovated. I'm looking for something that can drive all those speakers. And I think this is it. So check this out. I'll switch it from laundry over to washroom.
Evenings, Saturdays, and Sunday afternoons, weather permitting. Another reason to visit Simcoe County. Further info at hhp.on.ca. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
That's coming out of my washroom. Yeah, I'm right in between here.
Fully owned and operated by Central Ontario Broadcasting Limited. With that super...
Scale symmetry became perfect.
just very weak. That's okay.
Process.
That was weird. In an interview with CBC a little earlier today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says the process has begun for an independent investigation.
Since these concerns are so serious, I'm going to take action. But they were not someone who's experienced it personally. I'm not going to forward.
Political intrigue in Canada.